recording this session, so others will have the opportunity to view it. Families and community members, thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. I am Michael Lehan. I'm one of the assistant superintendents, and right this week we have offered a few different webinar experiences as we want to partner with our communities and make sure that you all have the information needed for a successful launch this year. The experience that we have today is really just how we have gone about promoting health and safety as we launch into the school year. We have a number of our operational professionals with us today, and they're going to share the intensive work that they have done to create a safe and engaging experience this year. Just a couple of things of logistics. We want to make sure that that you turn your mic off, so that way that there's no disruption for any of our friends who are on this call today. And then if you'd like to change your layout, you can see the diagram where you can change the layout so you can see the presentation and potentially others as well. At this time, I would like to launch into a video that our superintendent, Corey McIntyre, has put together. And once again, thank you for spending time with us today.
Hello, and welcome to our Ready to Restart Family Webinar Series. I'm Corey McIntyre, Superintendent of Osseo Area Schools. We've designed these webinars just for you and your scholar. Our goal is to help you have the best school experience possible in this most unusual school year. The last 6 months has been challenging for students and families. I know you miss your friends, your teachers, and the community that surrounds you with care and support every day. We miss you too. We are determined to help you have a successful start to the new school year. These webinars will help scholars and their families learn about a brand new school called the Distance Learning Academy, make effective use of digital resources, understand how we're keeping students and staff safe, and gain insight into how our staff are re-envisioning what it means to do school during a pandemic. Thanks for watching, and thank you for your support of Osseo Area Schools.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Ron Meyer, who will take the presentation from here.
Great, thank you, Michael, and good afternoon to our parents and community members that are joining us live right now, and all of those that watch it at a later time. My name is Ron Meyer. I'm the Executive Director of Finance and Operations for the school district. Part of my responsibilities is to oversee our operations department. And I just want to start off by just saying that we have been planning for several months, even since last spring when this pandemic first started, in anticipation of welcoming our students and our staff back into our buildings. So today we are going to walk through our 4 main operational areas, and we're going to hear a short presentation from the experts and the leaders in those particular areas. And then after each of those areas present for a few minutes, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you may have. So if you have questions about that particular area and you want to jot them in the comment section, we'll pause after each presentation and we'll walk through as many questions as we can get through and still stay on the timeline that we have established to stay within the hour block that we have to be with you today. We'll certainly keep track of any of those extra questions and try to get the information out to our community for those additional questions, or refer people to our website, which has a lot of information about our operational plan. So as we get started, we're going to start with our risk management and health and safety area. Really, this area drives all of our other operation area, and you'll see how it kind of builds on this health and safety component. And so I'd like to introduce, to walk us through our health and safety and risk management area, Dave Mordock and Rachel Kohler. They are coordinators of risk management and health and safety. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dave.
Thank you, Ron. Good afternoon, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone on our plans to keep students and staff safe as we return to school. As the district has done since March, risk management is ensuring the district is following guidance from the Minnesota Department of Health, the Minnesota Department of Education, and the CDC. The guidance is updated regularly, and these changes are reflected in district plans and processes. Next slide. Based on MDH, MDE, and CDC guidance, the district created a COVID preparedness plan template for the schools to use. Schools then used the template to add site-specific information to keep students and staff safe from arrival to dismissal. So the plan includes things such as, what does it look like when students arrive to school? What does lunchtime look like? What does it look like inside the classroom? And once again, what does it look like at dismissal? Within each preparedness plan, the school has a COVID building coordinator that oversees the plan. And at the district level, there's a team of individuals, myself included, and Rachel as well, that supports and monitors the plan. During the preparedness plan implementation phase, the district level COVID team visited each site several times to answer questions, provide guidance, and to ensure that the plan is being followed. The district level team will continue to review and support the sites with their preparedness plan until the pandemic has concluded. Next slide. One component of the COVID preparedness plan are health screenings for district families and our staff. District families play an important role every day that they send their student to school. And it's important that every day they send their student to school for an in-person learning, that they are checking their child for symptoms and doing a temperature check. Staff will be doing the same thing prior to their arrival to school. If a staff or student are experiencing any COVID-related symptoms, it is the utmost importance to stay home to stop the potential spread of COVID. Students will receive an additional health screening as they begin their school day. We'll be limiting visitors into our school, and visitors that come into our school will need to do a symptom screening as well. Next slide.
As Dave was mentioning, part of the COVID preparedness plan, it also includes signage. The buildings have been provided necessary signage, and each site has been provided signs to promote hand washing, covering your cough, and social distancing. There are also signs in district buildings about masks being required and the symptoms of COVID-19. Next slide. Based on the governor's executive order, all staff and students are required to wear masks while in district buildings. And as a district, we have provided personal protective equipment, or PPE, to staff and students. This includes face coverings for all staff and students, face shields for staff that request them, as well as protective barriers in the main offices of our schools. There are some situations where a face shield can be used in place of a face mask, and please refer to the district's face covering expectation document or your building principal if you have further questions. Next slide. Another part of our COVID preparedness plan is we're providing training to all staff on our district for COVID preparedness plans and the preventative measures we have put in place, to include the safe use of chemicals, the district-approved disinfectant for COVID-19, the steps needed to clean our buildings, and the prevention measures staff are expected to follow to ensure a healthy and safe school year for our students and staff. Next slide.
One of the key components in the hybrid scenario is the requirement to maintain 6 feet of social distancing at all times. Classrooms have been set up to ensure the 6-foot distancing between students and staff. And you can see that illustrated in the 2 photos there about how far apart those desks are. Next slide. Another measure in the COVID preparedness plan is to have controlled traffic patterns to ensure social distancing in hallways. These measures have been coordinated by school leadership at the sites based on their needs and practices for passing time, arrival time, and end of day. This varies from site to site, but this may look like one-way hallways or lanes of traffic within the school. Next slide. The district also has detailed plans on what to do if someone is feeling ill with COVID symptoms or has been in close contact with someone that has tested positive for COVID. The district has created a district level COVID team to respond to these situations. This district level COVID team is responsible for tracking and communicating with the Minnesota Department of Health, building administration, staff, and families when there's a COVID case or a suspected COVID case in their building.
Thank you, Dave and Rachel. At this time, we will pause and see if there are any questions at all from our viewers and those that are logged in. You can either, and Michael, I'm not sure what our normal process is. Do we have them unmute and ask the questions, or just put them in the comment box, or what's the best protocol?
Either way is fine. I think with the numbers, you can certainly unmute and ask yourself, or certainly text in the comment box. Either is fine.
Is there any questions specifically for our health and safety team? Again, you can certainly continue to represent those questions if they come up and you think about them as we move forward. Go ahead and put them in the text box and we can address them as we go along as well. We do have one question. Are teachers able to be within 6 feet when helping a student? Dave or Rachel, who wants to take a crack at that one?
I could answer that. So there will be times where a staff member will need to be within that 6 foot kind of bubble of a student. And what we really instructed staff is we can be in a student's space, but we don't want to live in the student's space. So if I need to come and help them with a math problem, try to make that momentary. But most of the classrooms are set up to really where the teacher is going to be at the front of the classroom, not infringing on the space of the students, but only moving into those spaces when absolutely necessary.
Okay, another question. There's some concern about passing time in the hallway. Not really a question there, but is there any comments there, Dave, in terms of some of the work that our teams and our schools have done as it relates to planning for that passing time? Because I know that is certainly a challenge, especially with the amount of students in some of our buildings. It's lessened a little bit by the 50% with the hybrid model, and even less than that because of the number of students that have opted for the Distance Learning Academy. But do you have any comments at all, Dave, in terms of some of the preparation that our teams have went through?
Yeah, I can speak specifically. I know from some of the sites that I'm responsible for working with what they're doing differently. Specifically, I think at elementary schools, the common practice is they're doing a lot of scheduling of who can be out in the hallways, whether it be for restroom breaks or hand washing, whatever the case may be, but really limiting basically 2 classes in the school out of their classroom at any given time. When we get into the secondaries, it varies a little bit. I know some of them are using block scheduling. So they're only having 3 classes a day. So there's only 3 passing times. So limiting passing times of that. Or in the case of like Osseo Middle School, where they do kind of a school within a school, they don't do a kind of traditional bell time. It's more by their houses or groups that they do their passing times. So it's less amount of students in a hallway at any given time. And another thing I know for most of the secondary schools, at least to start the school year, there are no lockers that will be available. And so that helps with the congregating part of it. So if there's, the idea is that once I'm dismissed from one class, I go directly to another class as well. I don't know, Rachel, if you have anything that you have to offer on that as well.
No, I would just agree with Dave. I mean, the fact that we're going to be limiting the numbers, that will help with the congestion in the hallway, and then a lot of the buildings have definitely put up a lot of signage as well, just to try to encourage the kids to either do one-way hallways. Some schools are doing that, or definitely having the kids on know the directions that they should be following within the hallways.
Great, thank you. This next question is actually a great segue into our next area, which is our facilities team. And to answer the question, I'm going to introduce you to our Director of Facilities and Transportation Operation, Dale Karlstrom. He's going to walk us through the presentation, but before he gets started, I will ask him this question, or if he can respond to this question. Will restrooms be cleaned throughout the day? And if so, how often? And so Dale, if you could respond to that, and then we'll go right into our facilities presentation.
The answer to the question is yes. The frequency would be something that we're going to have to try to manage with the volume of students that are in a particular restroom. So if we talk about a restroom group that is frequented by a lot of students, and it's after passing time at an elementary, let's say at the first part of the day, once those kids are in class, they would try to get in there, spray it down quickly, and get all the touch points in the restrooms. Keep in mind that we have several restrooms in each building. So and oftentimes we have one or two custodians on duty. So they would really have to be use a good strategy as far as which ones that they focus on, which ones that are being used most frequently. We are encouraging students, though, to wash their hands thoroughly. We're coaching kids on how to properly wash hands, and that's the best preventive method that we know of for, effectively reducing the exposure to the virus. All right, so again, good afternoon. I'm Dale Karlstrom. I'm the Director of Facilities and Operations. I'll be describing the work our facilities team has completed to ensure that our schools are as safe as possible, considering the challenges we have with the COVID-19 pandemic. Our team is working in close cooperation with the health and safety team, as well as the site leadership teams, to implement the facilities portion of the COVID preparedness plan. Our portion of this plan has three main areas of focus: the cleaning, disinfecting, and sanitizing, the strategies and practices and procedures therein, and then facilities modifications and mechanical systems management. In the area of cleaning and disinfecting, we will enlist the help of all staff to frequently wipe down all touch points throughout the facility. Our objective is to limit the potential spread of the COVID virus and other contaminants by using a sanitizer product that has a 30-second kill time and minimal steps in its application. All staff have been or will soon have the training on the proper application of the cleaning product. The product we have selected for the purpose needs no PPE for the application of it, and it's food safe. Our custodial team will be frequently wiping down touch points in the common areas throughout the building and sanitizing the restrooms. We have created hand sanitizer stations throughout the facility so that those who do not have immediate access to soap and water can sanitize their hands. It is the responsibility of the custodial maintenance leadership team to monitor and maintain the cleaning standards of the facilities to ensure that we are meeting the requirements set forth by the MDE and MDH guidance. If we have a confirmed case of COVID exposure at a site, we have trained our custodial team in the proper means and methods for cleaning the facility. Our health and safety experts and the COVID coordination team will direct the activities to ensure that our response is thorough and safe. In the area of facility modifications, to accomplish the required social distancing for the hybrid plan, it was necessary to make several physical modifications to the facilities, fixtures, furniture, and equipment. The plan requires a 6-foot distancing for all classrooms and gathering spaces, as Dave showed you earlier. We removed a significant amount of furniture to free up spaces in the classroom where there'll be 15 or less students in standard sized classrooms. Our cafeterias will be spaced in the same manner, and where necessary, other spaces like gyms will be used for lunches. We have installed barriers at the first point of contact, such as the receptionists in the front office and other spaces that greet students in the public. We have turned off all the drinking fountains and installed additional water bottle fillers to provide students and staff with safe drinking water. The custodial team is working with the site COVID coordinator to install floor signs and traffic directional signs to help students understand the necessary social distancing requirements. In the area of mechanical systems management, the maintenance department has developed a plan for adjusting our building automation systems to run our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems to meet the indoor air quality requirements and recommendations by the Minnesota Department of Health. We will increase run times at the beginning and the end of school days to circulate as much air as possible. We have adjusted the outside air intake and air volume to meet or exceed the MDH requirements. In addition, we have upgraded our air filtration throughout all facilities to the highest MERV rating that the systems will accept. The custodial maintenance department is committed to make every effort necessary to provide a safe, clean, and well-functioning learning environment. So Ron, I'm ready for questions from the audience.
Okay, thank you, Dale. We'll spend some time taking questions, so certainly indicate your questions in the comments, or if you want to unmute yourself and verbally ask the question, you can certainly do that as well. Have a question here right away for you, Dale. Is the non-toxic cleaning solution product line being used new to our district? And if so, what is the brand name?
Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong here, okay? It's got a long name, but the shortened version would be it's Ecolabs Sanitizer. And I mean, it's got a longer name, but I think basically it's used for food services, for you know, as a cleaning product for dish rooms and that sort of thing. And it's a like I said, it's food safe, 30-second kill time, and it's a 2-step process, so we don't have to clean, re-clean, and then clean again. So that was the purpose that we selected it, and we did test it, and it doesn't leave residue and that sort of thing. So we're happy with this product.
Yeah, and just to go a little bit further, we did spend a lot of time working with our vendors and with industry experts to really find a product that was going to be effective in ensuring sanitization of those areas that we were using it, as well as to be the best use for our staff and the number of staff, because we are asking our teachers and other staff throughout the building to use it, because sanitizing and health and safety is a shared responsibility for all of our staff across our building. So the next question, will there be
additional... Can I just add one more thing?
Yeah, please.
And then just so the community members and family who are listening know, it's also an EPA registered disinfectant for COVID-19 as well, which is important to know that. That's why we picked it as well.
Perfect, thank you. That's a great distinction. Next question, will there be additional cleaning stations in the classrooms, Dale?
I'm not, well, yes, because we're providing each teacher or each classroom, the adults in each classroom with all the materials necessary, the spray bottles, the material, the towels and paper towels and so forth necessary to wipe down the touch points in the classroom on a regular basis. So yes, and we are supporting the custodial teams. We're supporting those stations with providing the chemicals, providing all that's necessary, providing the actual hand sanitizer in the classroom, soap in the classroom, and so forth.
This is a good question here. During other Q&A sessions, it was mentioned that at the secondary level, students might be asked to assist in wiping down areas in their classrooms. Is this possible or allowed? I'll leave that either to Dale, or if you want to refer that to Rachel or Dale, Dave, you can do that as well.
We have made the kind of a statement from the beginning that we would not have students using cleaning chemicals unless they were high school age students who were doing job study type work that had actually the training and the proper procedures for using the products. So the answer would be no, we wouldn't be encouraging just every student to be helping in that way because of the use of the chemicals. Granted, the chemicals are user safe, but we want to make sure that we are being very careful with how we expose students to cleaning chemicals and who they are.
Great, thank you. Got time for another question or two if there's any out there. Again, as we move forward, if you think of any, feel free to jot them in the comment section. We will move forward with our next area, which is going to be our nutrition services. And so with that, I'd like to introduce to you our Director of Nutrition Services, Jeff Ansorge, and he's going to walk us through a short presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A. Jeff.
Hello, good afternoon. Could you forward to the next slide, please, Ron? So I'm going to cover some basics, brief overview of the meal program that'll be taking place over in fall. So first of all, meal availability. Free meals will be available to all students. And as of last week, the USDA, they extended a waiver nationwide that allows us to operate in the meal program that we have been over the past 7 months. And then MDE, as of last Friday, approved that as well for the state of Minnesota. So that they're speculating that it could go as long as December 31st or until the federal funding runs out. So at the beginning of school, September 14th through the 31st or until they tell us otherwise, we'll be offering free breakfast and lunch to students enrolled in the district. Next slide, please. And then so we've got two distinct learning options in Osseo area school districts. For fall, we've got a distance learning academy, which are students and families that have opted out of in-person learning. So we've got a meal program set up for those students that won't be stepping foot really in schools. And we also have a meal program set up for the other 15,000 kids that will be in a hybrid or in-person learning model. So both of those will be providing the same menu offerings. We have a 3-week cycle, and basically those meals will be some of the higher performing, more desired meals from last year's menu option. So 3-week cycle, and those meals that will be sent home will be basically in heatable containers and be able to microwave them or basically heat them up in the oven. So next slide, please. So Distance Learning Academy meals. So from September 14th through the 25th, we're going to offer curbside meals, and those will be available at elementary, middle, and high school sites from 7 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., and that's Monday through Friday. And then on the 25th, once we transition away from those curbside meals for Distance Learning Academy students, we're going to be offering weekly meal boxes. So these weekly meal boxes will contain 5 breakfasts and 5 lunches, and they're available for pickup on Fridays from our middle schools and high schools. and they'll be available for pickup from 9:30 in the morning until 1:30 in the afternoon. And basically, it'll have a breakfast and lunch for each day of the week for the week to come. We do have a delivery option available for families with barriers to pick up. And if you look on the website, all this information that I'm going over now is recapped and up to date on the website. And it also has sign up surveys for these meals. For Distance Learning Academy, we require that that families sign up for that, just because it's a fairly large production to produce that many meal boxes, and we need to have some numbers in place for that. Next slide, please. So for Non-Distance Learning Academy, so those other 15,000 students that will find themselves in a hybrid situation as of September 28th, we're offering meals in schools, so hot or cold breakfast, the choice of, and also hot lunches in schools. And then for their home learning days, we have A/B students. So if I'm a student that goes to school physically on a Monday, on my way home on Monday, I'll be offered a meal for Tuesday for my home learning day. And that'll include a cold breakfast and then a lunch that can be heated at home so that you'll have the hot lunch. And once again, those all follow the same menu cycle. It's the same items that we would have had last year on the menu. And that September 14th through the 25th for these students will be the curbside. But then once distance learning starts on the 28th, that's how those meals will function for in-school and home learning days. Next slide, please. And so some operational best practices that we're taking into consideration and putting into practice for food services. We're not offering, so there's basically no unpackaged self-service items will be allowed. So in the past, we would have serving lines, cafeteria lines set up where students could help themselves to a salad bar, to fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, things like that. So we won't be allowing that anymore. Everything will be served from behind the line. There's an 8-foot plexiglass barrier between the food and the student and the cashier to help ensure that safety. And we'll be putting it on the plate for them. If there's anything that a student would be grabbing themselves, it would be pre-packaged and not open. So social distancing is a priority in line as well as in dining spaces. And I know that Dale and health and safety touched base on that a bit. Limited maximum seating capacity in dining spaces. So according to Minnesota Department of Health CDC guidelines, 250 people is the maximum that we would allow in our cafeteria or dining spaces. The majority of our of the schools, we don't even come close to that 250, just because our spaces are much smaller and we're ensuring that our students are eating 6 feet apart. So student hand washing and sanitizing is required prior to entering the food service line. With elementary, it always has been a practice, and it will continue to be a practice where students are led through a hand washing station. We'll have sanitizers posted at the entrance to cafeteria lines and lunchrooms as well for students to sanitize their hands before they go through and eat. Barcode scanners. So we have some new technology this summer that we were going to implement off the start, both free meals now. We'll be easing into barcode scanning. But the point is, in the past, students would enter their PIN number, each person onto a keypad. And we wanted to get away from that. So we would minimize touch points used by multiple students over and over again. So we'll be implementing barcode scanners for students to identify themselves in order to purchase a meal or receive a free and reduced meal once that free meal waiver is done. And then gloves and masks will be worn by all food service employees. Gloves always have been a practice. It'll continue to be a practice, and we'll make sure that masks are worn, and cooks will practice the 6-foot social distancing as well. We'll be moving to disposable and or compostable plate and silverware. Will be used at all sites rather than reusable trays and reusable silverware, just to eliminate that possibility of spreading COVID through saliva on trays and silverware that might not be washed appropriately. So, and the plexiglass shields I already touched base on. So those are some of the best practices that we'll be using in nutrition services. And next slide, I believe, brings us to questions.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for that overview of our nutrition services. So we'll go into the Q&A. Again, if anyone has questions, go ahead and stick them into the comment section, and I'll read them off for Jeff. The first one, can meal boxes be somewhat customized? For example, can requests be made for no milk in those meal boxes? Jeff?
So the USDA MDE requires, for example, that milk be put in a box and be served. So when we're in this free meal program and doing it in boxes, as we're doing it like that, it's required that all components are put in that box or given with that box. So milk is a requirement. So as far as customizing, the only leeway we would have with that is if there's an allergy situation, which we have on our survey. If there's an identified allergy that's confirmed by a medical note or by a doctor, then we can customize based on the allergy. Otherwise, it's going to follow our menu cycle that we have posted on the website.
Okay, thank you. Next question. For that curbside pickup from September 14th through the 28th, do you have to pick up at your assigned school, or can you pick up at any school? It's a great question.
Yep, so you can pick up at any school. We'll have 26 sites, all of our elementary, all of our middle schools, all of our high schools, and any student can go to any school. It doesn't need to be their home school, and pick up from 7 to 1:30 Monday through Friday.
And will recycling still be encouraged? With more disposable items, is there care taken not to create more waste?
Yep. So those trays that I'd mentioned, those are compostable trays. So we've taken that into account. We've looked into compostable silverware as well. We've got some challenges from a supply chain demand and supply that's kind of coming to play here with that. But yes, we are taking that into consideration. And sites that have done sorting tables will still do sorting tables.
And then the next question, how long will the free meal program run?
Yep, so the free meal program, currently USDA guidance is that it could go as long as December 31st. The stipulation there is that or until the federal funding runs out for it. So I don't have a good answer for that. It could happen November 1st. It could happen October 15th. And I also believe that if the funding is still strong and in place, I wouldn't doubt that they might look to offer to extend that depending on where that financial situation sits.
Next question, is there a place to go to specify that a student does not need the off-day boxes or those packages for the next day so that the funding can go to others who need it?
Yep, so I'm assuming that's in the hybrid situation for those non-DLA Academy students on their day that they're in school as they're leaving. If you don't want a meal on the website, there's a section for non-distance learning students, and you can go to a survey there. It's called an opt-out survey. You can opt out for your student to take a meal home, and then we'll distribute that list on a site basis and make sure that our kitchen managers get that and communicate with homeroom teachers so those students don't receive that meal.
Great question. Thank you. Any other questions at all for Jeff?
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Information will continue to be updated on the Nutritional Services website. And if you have any questions, there's a phone number and email addresses to contact us as well. Thank you.
One more question for you that just came in, Jeff. Is there a specific person to call with info about compostable issues at a school level? Would they contact the nutrition service office or the individual school, or where would you want to forward them to?
Yeah, I would say forward it to the nutrition services phone number on the website, that general line, or that general email would be a good place to start. And if we can't, if we don't have an answer, we can connect with that individual school and work through that.
Great, thank you. All right, with that, we're going to move on to our final operational area, and that is our transportation team. So we have two people on the call that I'll introduce. Troy Schreifels, who is our Director of Facilities and Transportation Operations, and Nick Martini, who is our Transportation Coordinator. And I will pass it on to them to walk us through our transportation presentation.
Thanks, Ron. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Troy Schreifels, the Director of Facilities and Transportation, and I appreciate this opportunity to share with our community and our viewers a little bit about our transportation preparation. I say that mildly when I say little. There's been a lot of work in the background, and if Ron, you go to the next slide. We've been collaborating very extensively since really mid-spring with a number of different organizations to try to come up with the best solutions and the best opportunities to transport our students safely to school this fall. Transportation's been very busy, and we've worked with the national and state associations for pupil transportation, the Minnesota Department of Education, Health and Public Safety, and the CDC to define ways to keep students and staff safe during the school transportation process. We have worked to define and implement the best practices that keep the impeccable safety of school transportation intact while addressing the concerns that have been at the forefront of COVID-19 pandemic. And as many of you know, when we transport students on school buses, they're in confined spaces, and that's been a unique challenge. And so we've worked very closely with that. And I'm going to introduce Nick Martini, our coordinator of transportation, and he's going to take you through a couple of slides that kind of start from the beginning at home and the family aspect of our relationship of transportation to the bus stop and then to the school and on the bus. So you'll get a little flavor of what we've been doing in transportation to prepare our team to deliver our students safely to school. Good afternoon, Nick.
Hey, thank you, Troy. Ron, next slide, please. So this year, before your students head out to the bus stop, we are asking our parents to screen their students prior to the school day. Information on screening will accompany your students' digital bus information as it's transmitted to you this year, and it will mirror the process outlined by Dave and Rachel earlier. This process must include a symptom check for fever, chills, a new cough, shortness of breath, a new sore throat, new muscle aches, a new headache, or new loss of taste or smell. If your student is symptomatic, please keep them home from school and follow recommendations from your physician. It will be important for our students to maintain 6 feet of social distance as they wait for the bus. So this is where you come in. We look at our parents as partners in transportation with us. So we need parents and guardians to remind students the importance of this and to monitor distancing practices at the bus stop. Using tools like showing students how to extend their arms to gauge distance can be a fun and effective way to get younger students to understand appropriate distance between their peers. Next slide, please. Changes you will see on the bus will begin with face coverings being required for all occupants of the vehicle, including students and staff. Liquid hand sanitizer or sanitizing wipes that meet CDC requirements for effectivity will be provided for students as they board. Buses will be occupied to a maximum of 50% of the specific vehicle capacity. So on a typical full-size bus, this means about 38 students. And that's one of our general large yellow buses. And then obviously on our special education vehicles and our smaller buses, that number will be reduced. Students will see some seats near the driver marked as unavailable. This is to comply with the Minnesota Departments of Education and Health requirements that there be 6 feet of social distance provided to the driver. Additionally, markings on seats will guide students in maximizing social distance based on ridership numbers on the vehicle. Roof vents and windows will be open as weather allows to increase airflow and introduce fresh air into the bus. When students are not on the bus, our vendors will be sanitizing vehicles thoroughly after morning, midday, and afternoon runs. Sanitizing of high-touch areas such as handrails and seat tops will occur between each school tier. Next slide, please. So on the bus this year, familiar to our elementary students, but new for many of our secondary students, will be assigned seats on all school runs. Assignments will be based on morning pickup order, with students going to the rearmost available seat. These seat assignments will be used for inbound and take-home trips, and having a seat assignments will assist us with providing the most possible space between students and aid in contact tracing if needed. As explained in the diagram, ridership will dictate seat spacing. On a trip with 11 students, we would occupy only the seats noted in red, alternating seats and rows. As ridership grows towards capacity, we will fill in additional seats, providing as much room as possible, but not exceeding the 50% capacity. Drivers will be there to assist students with proper seating and spacing. Next slide, please. The process at our buildings will be slightly different as well. Buses will unload as they arrive at sites. If multiple buses arrive at the same time, staff will assist with an orderly dismissal process. Students are to go directly into the building and head to class. In the afternoons, students will be directed to load buses in a quick and orderly fashion. While on the sidewalk, students may see directional arrows indicating traffic flow, and depending on site, may be assigned a specific entry door based on grade or school classroom. Staff will be available to assist with any questions students may have. Students will not be allowed to congregate on the sidewalks when going to and from buses. These are some of the highlights of the changes in our transportation process. The main concepts will be familiar to our students and should be easy for our scholars to adapt to our changes. With that, I think we can take whatever questions people have, Ron.
Thank you, Nick. Is there any questions for our transportation staff? All right. Oh, we got one. Is there additional supports for schools who have heavy parent drop-off at those particular schools? That's a great question. Nick or Troy, who wants to tackle that one?
I can provide some context and Nick can chime in as well. I know that we're seeing and hearing, especially on the news even last night, that many schools that have opened already are seeing a significant increase in capacity for parent drop-off. We have worked with each individual school to review their drop-off pickup plans. We're comfortable at this point knowing that some parents will make a decision to self-transport, that between the 50% capacity in the hybrid model and the number of students and families that have elected to go to our distance learning academy, that we should see a reduced overall volume in our school plans. And so we feel confident and comfortable that there'll be a safe and efficient process in drop off and pickup. I would always say though, our first days of school, a lot of families elect to self-transport, so it can get pretty busy. I would expect that families should be prepared to be waiting in queues a little bit longer, but there should be some efficiency and organization by each site, and each site has a plan to address that.
Thank you, Troy. Next question. Nick talked about the assigned seats. So will those assigned seats be communicated prior to day one? Or is it something that the bus driver will provide to those students on day one?
That's a great question. Assigning seats is a interesting and challenging process for all of our scholars and also for our bus drivers. That will be worked out in the first several days of transportation as the students arrive and we know and confirm that they're on the bus. They will have marked seats to go to, and they'll load and go to the back of the bus and work their way up, which is different than normal years. In normal years, we like to sit our youngest kids at the front, but we will work with the drivers, and the drivers have gone through some additional training and conversations about expectations with that this fall. So it'll be the first couple of days of ridership that'll be ironed out with the driver and the students. Great,
thank you, Troy. This next question I'm actually going to ask Dave to weigh in on. It's specific about a positive test for COVID. So if a student tests positive for COVID, will the other students who are assigned to the same bus and the driver be quarantined?
So yeah, it's a great question, and the answer is it depends. So what we look at, and it really, and this is where the assigned seating plays a huge impact and role in that, is when we have a report of anybody being COVID positive, we're going to start that contact tracing process. And what we're going to be looking at is following the MDH guidance is, when we think about people that need to quarantine, it's people that would be considered close contact. And what MDH defines as close contact are those within 6 feet of the COVID positive person for longer than 15 minutes. And so if we have staff, students, bus driver, whatever the case may be, that are potentially on that bus, but are greater than 6 feet from the COVID positive person, then they would not have to quarantine. But our process is we would send out a general notification to those that, hey, we've had a exposure after working with MDH. And if you're greater than 6 feet, it would most likely be considered a low exposure. So monitor for symptoms. But those that were defined as close contact within 6 feet, greater than 15 minutes, would have to quarantine for 14 days from contact.
And I will offer just a follow-up statement as well. If we find that we have a bus where a student has tested positive or a passenger has tested positive, we have procedures in place to down that bus and to do even further thorough sanitization of that bus beyond what we normally do as well. So there are plans in place to address that as well.
And that's really the importance. Nick talked about the seating charts that we're implementing. That will go a long way in helping us do that tracing that Dave just mentioned, so that we can really determine with certainty who was potentially exposed within 6 feet to for greater than 15 minutes to really help the Department of Health give us guidance in terms of what that next step should be for our students and our staff. Next question, is there a place to opt out of transportation for our students? Nick.
Yeah, so one of the new processes we did put in place this year is we did require our high school students for the first time to opt into transportation, and that was to help us manage capacity. Typically, we have not solicited that information from families for our elementary or other secondary students, but it is always appreciated for us. And if anybody is in that position, they can call our mainline transportation phone number on our website, or email busquestions@district279.org to provide that information. And that does aid us in assessing capacity. So we appreciate that when parents take that extra step to notify us.
This next question, I'm not sure who's going to want to weigh in on this one, but what about walkers? Will they be given a place to put extra gear that students riding the bus may not be needing? Some have mentioned no lockers. So whether that's additional clothing or whatever it might be for those walkers. Anyone, Dave or Rachel, who helped with those plans, or maybe even Michael, from a building level perspective? Anyone want to weigh in on this one?
I can weigh in from what I've been hearing from the sites is, like I said, I don't believe that the secondary schools will be issuing lockers, whether that occurs for the entire school year or not. I know they're not starting with issuing lockers. And I know some elementary schools are doing the same thing, that as of, I say is, and we have a day where you probably would want to wear a winter coat in early September, that they'll be looking, if they're not providing lockers early on, as the weather changes, they know they're going to have to, particularly at our elementary school, where we're going outside for recess and snow pants and boots and those types of things. So I think it just kind of varies on the school, but being very cognizant of what level of school they are. We know that secondary students, regardless of the weather, like to wear a t-shirt and shorts and no winter coat. So maybe they wouldn't necessarily need that, but we will be providing lockers as needed. Particularly in the elementary school. I think it's yet to be determined how that's going to look at the secondary level.
And if you can stay in queue, Dave, this next one I think you can take, and you kind of alluded to it, but just to kind of dig a little bit deeper, will parents be told if a rider on their child's bus tested positive?
Yes, we want to provide transparency of if we were to have a COVID positive issue. We obviously protect the identity of those, that's protected information of those that are tested positive for COVID, but you'll be getting depending on if your child is a close contact, getting notified that they need to quarantine. If they're not, just a general notification that somebody associated with that bus is tested positive for COVID. Your child hasn't been identified as a close contact, and just to monitor for symptoms. So when we talk about those general notifications, MDH looks at those as really no different than if you were to go to a grocery store. There's a risk, but the risk is low. And so it's just kind of what they call community kind of exposure kind of thing. But a notification will be made, whether it's on a bus or in a school, to be just what that looks like is that notifications will go out.
All right, thank you, Dave. One follow-up question to that, Dave. Will it come in an email or another way?
Email for sure. And I think we're still kind of looking at kind of I'm 100% sure we know that we're doing it on email. Most likely, if they're close contacts, it's probably going to have a phone call that goes with it, just because we're going to want to ensure that families get that. And we may be, when I say the phone call, it may be also utilizing the district kind of notification system where you get the automated message that, hey, check your email. So it may not be a personal call. It may just be using our automated system that says, hey, make sure you check your email for an important message. So still kind of working that out. But if you're a close contact, you'll at least be getting an email and a phone notification, whether that's a personal phone call or just a notification to check your email. And for others, I believe it's just going to be an email about a general notification.
This next question might be a collective effort again, and so whether it's Troy and Nick or Dave and maybe Michael, and it's a good question. Will students be suspended from the bus if they refuse to wear a mask?
I can probably start with that one. We've had a lot of discussion about face masks and the safety of face masks on our buses, and our drivers are prepared. So it's kind of a twofold question. Number one, if the student were to show up and not have a face mask, we will have spare face masks available by our drivers to issue to the student. And if the student continues to forget that face mask, a bus referral will be placed in the system. It's electronic referral, and it's sent to the school, and the school will work specifically with the student to address it. If a student shows up and refuses to wear a face mask, two things are looked at. Is it a situation where they have an exemption where they're not required to wear it? And if so, we would have to be notified of that information, and we would inform the driver, because there are some special circumstances where students don't. And we would have to address that and provide the safety precautions for all the passengers and the student. But if a student specifically does not want to wear a face mask and refuses to do so, that would be handled at the site level with the building principal and administration on that end. We won't leave a student behind at a bus stop. We won't not provide that transportation, but we will refer them immediately to the building leadership at the site to address that issue. But it is a requirement under the state executive order from the governor that masking is required both on the school bus and in the building. And so that would be addressed by the site administration.
And just to follow up with that for clarity, even for those exceptions, the exception is for a face shield to be used rather than a face mask. And so there are some certain exceptions as part of the governor's executive order that does allow in certain circumstances for a face shield to be used instead of a face mask. So with that, we are about out of time. I want to just make one more comment as we wrap up, and then I'll turn it over to Michael. And that's just to say that our operations team has been working tirelessly to ensure that our facilities and our operations are ready to ensure the highest level of safety and health for all of our students, our families, and our staff. And we are very excited to welcome our students back in whatever capacity, whether it be through our Distance Learning Academy or through whatever model we are in for in-person learning. And so there's a lot of information on our website. We would definitely encourage you to go onto our website and look at some of those different operational plans that you can see how much time and energy we have put into ensuring the health and safety of our students and staff. So with that, I know there's a few more questions coming in. I'm going to turn it back to Michael to be sensitive to time, and we can certainly run through additional questions if we want to go over time here.
I think I saw Troy respond to the question, and other ones are just appreciation. So we too express appreciation to families for giving us grace through this time. I hope that during this presentation it was evident how intentional we are and how mindful we are to ensure a safe launch to the school year. I appreciate each of the families taking time out of their day. For each of the families that are going to review this at a later date using our YouTube channel, thank you as well. We are in partnership with our community, and we are excited to start the school year. And thank you so much for entrusting your pride and joy with us here in Osseo Area Schools. Have a great rest of your day and be well.